This is a true story, recorded on a truck driver's dashcam in the winter of 2021. The Dalton Highway in Alaska is one of the most isolated roads in the world. It's a brutal, unforgiving stretch of ice and snow, cutting through hundreds of miles of frozen wilderness. What one driver captured on his camera that night, on that very road, remains, to this day, completely unexplained. His name was Mark, a seasoned long-distance trucker. He'd driven the Dalton more times than he could count. He knew its dangers, its sudden blizzards, its treacherous ice patches. On this particular night, his job was simple: deliver a tanker full of fuel to a remote station deep in the Arctic Circle. The world outside his cab was a monochrome canvas of white snow and black sky. The only sounds were the steady hum of his engine, the crunch of tires on packed ice, and the lonely howl of the wind sweeping across the tundra. Inside, the glowing dashboard cast a faint green light on his face. He could see his own breath misting in the cold air, a constant reminder of the lethal temperatures just beyond the glass. The road stretched on, a hypnotizing, endless ribbon of white under the powerful throw of his headlights. He was utterly alone. The dashboard clock glowed 2:43 a.m. That's when he first saw it. Up ahead, on the far right shoulder of the road, a shape. At first, he thought it might be a road sign, maybe covered in snow, or a strange rock formation he hadn't noticed before. But as he got closer, the shape resolved itself. It was a person, a human figure, standing perfectly still in the middle of nowhere. His heart skipped a beat. This was impossible. No one, absolutely no one, should be out here. Not at this hour. Not in this cold. The temperature outside was well below freezing, a fatal exposure for anyone not properly equipped. The figure was wearing what looked like dark, torn clothes, completely unsuitable for the Arctic conditions. It just stood there, unmoving, as the massive truck barreled closer. It didn't wave for help. It didn't try to flag him down. It just stood. A cold dread, colder than the air outside, began to creep up Mark's spine. His training and his instincts screamed at him to keep going, to not stop for anything on this desolate highway. But his humanity wouldn't let him. What if it was someone from a wreck he hadn't seen? What if they were hurt, delirious from the cold? He eased his foot off the accelerator, the truck's engine braking with a low growl. He flicked his high beams on and off, trying to get a reaction. Nothing. The figure remained as still as a statue carved from ice. As the truck slowed to a crawl, its headlights painted the person in stark, vivid detail. That's when the dashcam footage began to glitch. The image flickered with a brief burst of static, just for a second, and then the figure moved. It turned its head. The movement was unnatural, impossibly slow, as if it were fighting some immense pressure. The face that turned towards the headlights was pale, a ghostly white against the darkness. But the eyes were what truly terrified Mark. They were dark, hollow pits, devoid of any light or life. They seemed to absorb the headlight beams, reflecting nothing back. The static on the dashcam flickered again, more intensely this time, the audio crackling with an electronic hiss. Mark's hand was hovering over the radio, ready to call for help, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. And then it happened. In the span of a single heartbeat, the figure launched itself from the shoulder and across the road, directly in front of his truck. It didn't run. It didn't leap. It moved with a speed that defied physics, a dark fluid blur that streaked across his vision. The dashcam footage captures it as a distorted trail, a glitch in reality. Mark slammed on the brakes, the truck groaning in protest as the tires screeched against the ice. The trailer jackknifing slightly behind him, he braced for an impact that never came. The figure was simply gone. It had crossed the entire two-lane highway in a fraction of a second, and then vanished into the pitch-black darkness on the other side. It didn't run into the woods. It didn't fall. It was there, and then it wasn't. The truck slid to a stop, angled across the road, its headlights now pointing into an empty expanse of snow and scattered trees. Mark sat there, hands trembling, his heart pounding against his ribs. The air in the cab felt electric, thick with an unseen presence. He stared at the dashcam display, rewinding the last 30 seconds. He watched it again and again. The still figure, the slow, chilling turn of the head, the burst of static, the impossibly fast crossing, and then nothing. He grabbed his radio, his voice shaking as he called it in. He described what he saw, his words tumbling out in a panicked rush. The dispatcher on the other end was calm, professional, but you could hear the disbelief in her voice. State troopers were dispatched to the location Mark provided. They arrived hours later, their searchlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. They scoured the area for hours. They searched both sides of the highway, fanning out into the frozen woods. They found nothing. No body, no signs of a struggle. No one had been reported missing in the region. Most chillingly, they found no footprints. Aside from Mark's tire tracks on the road, the deep, untouched snow on both sides of the highway was perfectly pristine. There was no evidence that anyone had ever been standing there at all. The only proof was the corrupted, glitching file on Mark's dashcam. The footage was analyzed by experts, but the strange distortions and the figure's impossible speed could not be explained. To this day, it remains an open but inactive case, filed away as an unexplained phenomenon. Mark eventually finished his delivery, but he never drove the Dalton Highway at night again. This was a real event. Some roads are not meant to be driven alone.